Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
If you've been stuck at home sick, chances are you may have been tempted to get, well, everything that the drugstore offers.
I'm going to go to CVS's website.
And if you've gone to the store or tried to order medicine online,
and I'm going to look at cold and flu medicine.
You might have noticed a trend over the last few years.
It looks like there's a lot of familiar name brands. There's Mucinex and Sudafed. Then there's also just a lot from CVS Health.
Store brand medicine with major drugstore labels on the packages that look a lot like their name brand competitors.
CVS Health chest congestion relief.
It seems to be everywhere.
Scrolling down a bit here. There's CVS Health effervescent cold relief.
From cough syrup.
There's Robitussin. And right next to that, CVS Health Tussin.
To allergy medication.
Allergy medicine. There's CVS Health Allergy Relief. Looks a lot like Zyrtec in terms of the packaging.
But in a few important ways, they're different.
I think like the biggest name in antacids is Tums. There's that kind of like signature clear bottle with the blue top. They have those here. There is also for, several dollars less, the CVS Health version of antacid tablets with a very similar bottle, that kind of clear bottle with a blue top.
And like a lot of people, I've been tempted by the cheaper prices of store brand drugs. But Bloomberg's Anna Edney told me I might want to do more than just look at the price.
You often don't know who are making these brands. This drugstore is not making their own store brands. They don't have their own manufacturing site. They hire someone to do that for them. And it doesn't say on the box who does that.
Even though it doesn't say it on the box, Anna got to digging. And what she found out is, and I don't say this lightly, pretty astonishing. Today on the show, the underside of store brand drugs and the laws that shield pharmacy chains from liability. I'm David Gura, and this is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. Our story begins about a decade ago. That's when, Anna says, major drugstores around the U.S. started changing their strategy to make more generic pharmaceuticals, like those CVS Health antacids I saw.
CVS specifically has tried to, boost their store brand drugs the last several years because one of the biggest things about these products is they offer higher margins for the company.
Higher margins. In other words, these store brand drugs make companies like CVS a pretty good profit. Anna says that around when big pharmacy chains were introducing these new offerings, she was covering the Food and Drug Administration for Bloomberg, and the influx of store brand drugs caught her attention because she was spending a lot of time looking at the FDA's inspection reports.
I noticed a lot of their inspection reports when they would send inspectors to places that were making drugs for the U.S. in India and China were disturbing. There were a lot of issues with sanitation and hiding data that might not show the best results for these drugs and the quality of these drugs.
But these factories were not exactly household names. And Anna says it was pretty hard to figure out which U.S. companies were contracting with these manufacturers. But about a year ago, Anna had a breakthrough when the FDA started recalling eye drops.
I was curious because there have been in the last a little over a year, there have been a lot of eye drop recalls specifically, and some of these early on resulted in really bad eye infections and even death for some people.
Deadly eye drops. Terrifying on all accounts. So Anna did what she normally does, and she looked at the FDA's website to see which facilities the agency had inspected as a result of the recalls.
So the Food and Drug Administration clearly got interested in wanting to check up on other eye drop makers and make sure they were doing things the right way. And so when they started inspecting these other places, they found issues that caused them great concern. These were manufacturers in India. One of the main ones is called Killich, and they made store brand drugs for CVS and others.
That is when it clicked for Anna. While it had been nearly impossible to know who was making a store brand drug, these recalls and the subsequent inspections were all public on the FDA's website. So for the first time, she could link the manufacturing site of a recalled drug or eye drop with a store brand.
I realized in this database there was a way for me to find that, to search that way, and to kind of parse the data. I wondered, hey, I feel like CVS has shown up in a lot more of these recalls than others. Could that be a pattern? And so that's what I set out to see.
So Anna started crunching the numbers, and it turned out over the last decade, CVS had more than twice as many recalls for its store brand drugs as Walgreens. That works out to a little over 1 recall a month over the last 10 years. But she wanted to double check her math to make sure there wasn't something she was missing about CVS versus its competitors.
I wanted to make sure, there wasn't some reason for this. Do they sell more of these store brand drugs or something like that? But Walgreens and CVS have about the same number of health and wellness products. They're about 2,000 for each company. So there wasn't a big difference there. And then I also looked at the companies they were hiring and found that CVS was working with a lot more companies that were getting dinged by the FDA as well.
In other words, CVS was choosing manufacturers with a history of safety issues more frequently than, say, its biggest rival, Walgreens. Who are these third-party manufacturers you mentioned?
Yeah, there are a lot of them overseas, a lot of them in India specifically, making generic drugs. And then there were some that had issues that CVS had hired as well in the U.S. But these are usually smaller companies that you haven't heard of before. They're not going to always be big-name generic drug companies even.
Some of these recalls revealed some striking violations. One made drugs for kids that were too potent.
I did come across one that was also making pesticides even on the same machines as drugs.
Those drugs included nasal sprays for babies. And there's more.
I came across a few instances where they were using dirty water, essentially contaminated water, to make the drugs. They had found a ton of mold colonies in this water that was right near these drugs that were being produced.
That one was making CVS-branded pain and fever medications, also for children. And it wasn't just the machines. The FDA's inspection reports of the facilities also turned up issues with workers' cleanliness.
There was one where when they were making eye drops, there were workers in a sterile area that were working barefoot and, didn't have clean uniforms on.
It's shocking stuff. And it raised questions about what's going on with store brand drugs at all of the big pharmacies, but also at CVS in particular. After you did your reporting, were you able to determine why CVS is an outlier?
I think that's a great question. They answered some questions from me through email, but didn't go into great detail or let me talk to anyone there.
CVS sent Anna a statement.
The company said the store brand drugs, quote, are designed to maximize quality and safety, work as intended, comply with regulations, and satisfy customers, end quote.
But that didn't really answer her questions about CVS or about any other big pharmacy that's used one of these facilities to make store brand drugs. Because the thing is, all this information isn't secret. It's right there on the FDA's website.
Why don't the big pharmacies know this is going on there if the FDA can walk in and see it?
Coming up after the break, a key loophole that allows big pharmacies to play by different rules and how you can identify products that could be questionable. So to recap, Bloomberg's Anna Edney analyzed all the FDA's recall reports for store brand drugs from the big three pharmacies, from CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart over the last decade. And she was able to connect the facilities that manufactured store brand drugs that had been recalled with which big pharmacies had contracted with them. And Anna found that CVS store brand drugs, basically the pharmacy chain's versions of drugs like Tylenol or Tums, were being recalled more often than its competitors, including Walgreens or Walmart. And Anna wanted to know, why was this happening at all?
I did talk to a professor at Stanford, Kevin Schulman, and he's looked into the industry a lot. His concern is that essentially buyers of these drugs are looking to save money because many Americans assume it's a generic is a generic is a generic. Like it's, doesn't matter which one you buy, so which one's cheapest, and that's what we're going to go with. and that keeps driving the prices down. And he said that essentially you have to cut corners as the company then somewhere to make that price. And where they are cutting the corners is on quality.
To break that down, essentially because a lot of us assume one generic drug is the same as a name brand drug, it's the same active ingredient, we tend to gravitate to the least expensive one on the shelf. So if a company like CVS or Walgreens or Walmart wants its brand to be competitive, lowering the price is a clear way to do that. There's also something else helping them compete.
So the CVS store brand and the other store brand drugs, they seem to have sort of a loophole.
Basically, the rules for the likes of Advil or Motrin or Tums are more stringent.
They have to follow this guidance by the FDA, which gives them an idea of how they should be operating, how they should be making sure that what they're putting on the shelves still meets the quality standards that they're supposed to meet. And, they can't put anything out. They can't say, oh, we didn't know because we didn't make it. They have to assure when they put that product on the shelf that it's a quality product.
But when big name pharmacies use contract manufacturers to make generics, they're not beholden to the same regulations.
The loophole for the store brand drugs is that they are considered a private label distributor.
And this is where problems can crop up. Well, first, it helps to understand the difference between, say, the CVS Health brand painkiller and Motrin.
So it needs to have ibuprofen in it, but it also can have different inactive ingredients. So, the pill takes a lot of other things to make it, mash together, essentially solvents to make it all come together and to make it stick together and, colors and things like that. But those inactive ingredients can have an effect sometimes on how your body reacts to it, how your body digests it, and how it works for you.
So who is responsible then for guaranteeing that they are safe and effective? Is that the job of the U.S. pharmacy chain? Is it the job of the FDA? Who's doing that work, if anyone?
So in this instance, it would be the company that the pharmacy chain contract manufactures with.
Because the ultimate responsibility for the quality of any of these store brand drugs lies with the contract manufacturer,
the pharmacy chain kind of gets to look the other way and say, we put it on the shelf, we admit that, but we don't know. We don't assure the quality in there in the same way.
And as for the FDA, well, even though the agency issues these inspection reports, they only happen after a drug or a product has been reported for having an issue. It's reactive, not proactive.
They don't test drugs themselves on any large sort of scale, and certainly not over-the-counter medications. It's not a closely regulated industry.
You've done all of this reporting, and I wonder if this has changed the way that you yourself decide what to buy when you go to the pharmacy.
Yes, it does. I was just purchasing eye drops, and I did get the brand name Visine eye drops, but I tried not to be too crazy about it because you could go nuts just trying to figure out what would be safe for you and your family.
This is The Big Take from Bloomberg News. I'm David Gura. This episode was produced by David Fox. It was edited by Aaron Edwards and Rebecca Greenfield. It was mixed by Alex Segura. It was fact-checked by Adriana Tapia. Naomi Shavin and Kim Gittleson are our senior producers. Our senior editor is Elizabeth Ponso. Nicole Beamsterboer is our executive producer. Sage Bauman is Bloomberg's head of podcasts. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe and review The Big Take wherever you get your podcasts. It helps people find the show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.